Sam?
Yes, we are.
Great. Kia ora koutou and welcome to the Sustainability and Community Resilience meeting online. We're going to start the meeting with a karakia from Councillor Davidson.
Tū tawa mai I runga, tū tawa mai I raro, tū tawa mai I roto, tū tawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai, te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tai kie.
Tai kie. Kia ora, thanks Mike. Let's start with apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Major. Do I have someone to move that? Tim and Pauline to second. What we might just do is a thumbs up for those in favour, please. Any against? No. Declare that carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. We have a declaration for Councillor Johansson for item 11. Any other declarations of interest today? No. Thank you.
Sorry, Sarah, just there were some as part of the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. So when and the Metropolitan Strengthening Communities Fund. So when we come to that item, I just note
carry those over.
Some of the organisations. Thank you.
Thanks.
Because
so
I've got one for Keep Christchurch Beautiful in there somewhere too.
Yeah, and mine for Walston Brass. So yeah. Sam, do you have a record of those?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Right. Confirmation of previous minutes. Do I have a mover for those? Tim and Mike to second. Yeah, all those in favour, thumbs up. Any against? Click through both screens. No. Declare that carried. Thank you very much. There are no public forum today and no deputations by appointment, no presentation of petitions. And item 7 has been moved to the end of the agenda today. So we'll move to item 8, the draft Autotahi Christchurch Community Strategy. And so Claire is here to present that for us. Welcome, Claire. And Katie's here as well to answer any questions on engagement.
Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa. Hi, everybody. The purpose of today's report is to seek the committee's approval for the draft.
Claire, you're a bit glitchy.
Autotahi Christchurch community. Am I?
Yeah. Do you want to speak without your video on and see if that makes a difference to start with?
Sure. That's off. It's off now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you really clearly now.
Sorry. Yeah, it keeps coming up saying my internet's unstable, so apologies for that. The purpose of this report is to seek the committee's approval for the draft Autotahi Christchurch Community Strategy to go out for public consultation. As you know, we've undertaken an extensive review of the previous 2007 Strengthening Communities Strategy, and we've undertaken really broad engagement over the period of a year nearly with a wide range of stakeholders and the development of this refreshed strategy. We've worked with council staff across many different units to ensure a partner-centric approach. We've met with almost all unit heads across council who universally support the draft strategy, including ELT. We've met with all community boards across the city and worked with specific working group from your committee who have helped us to develop up the draft. And our working group has consisted of both internal staff and external representatives from agencies, community agencies across the city and sectors. We think we've captured the essence of those conversations and the community aspirations, and feel now we're ready to take it out to public consultation to get feedback on the proposed direction. So we're looking forward to talking to residents and community groups throughout the consultation period, and we'll be encouraging submissions and the use of hearings too if they wish to speak in person. So we're really cognizant of the difficulties at present with COVID, and we'll be looking for innovative ways to engage with the community. We'll be specifically holding sessions with representatives of the community, like our Multicultural Advisory Group, our Disability Advisory Group, our Youth Committee, and a range of other networks that we are involved with, both at a local neighbourhood level and also at a metropolitan level. So we're really at that stage now where we're seeking your permission to proceed forward to community consultation.
Thanks, Claire. Just at a high level, because this is a sort of review of the old strategy, what are some of the key differences between this draft and the old strategy?
I think when we did the evaluation, we understood that through many conversations with people that the old strategy was out of date, really, even in the language. We found that it was long, it didn't have a clear reporting and monitoring framework around it. It was repetitious. It did, as I say, lack a framework for monitoring the achievement of its goals. And so a lot's changed since 2007, as we all know. The world has changed, and Christchurch in particular has gone through an enormous amount of disruption. And I think the new strategy looks at that and looks at where we need to take and work with the community to go forward, particularly in that preparedness area of supporting communities to thrive in disruption, and support those communities to work together more effectively to be prepared, and that includes climate change too. That wasn't on the agenda back in 2007.
Thanks so much. Do we have questions from councillors? Jimmy.
Okay, yeah. Yesterday, I sent 2 questions to the office of CE regarding to list the items, and I have not yet received a response. The first question regarding if we review on page 66, even we review the page 75 and 79, we can see the Lease draft of the Autotahi Christchurch community strategy consists of a lot of affiliate strategies. For instance, like a multicultural strategy, social housing strategy, heritage strategy, Christchurch transport strategic plan, as well as climate change strategy, etc. But in considering, each strategy of all these strategies have an individual implementation plan for the implementation of individual strategy. So my question is how to distinguish each strategy clearly with the draft Autotahi Christchurch community strategy to avoid the duplication for the implementation of the Christchurch community strategy. Second question is, I didn't see the budget can support for the implementation of the new strategy. These are two questions.
Thanks, Jimmy. Claire, have you got some answers for us there?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. We're aware that there are a range of other strategies out there that are probably broader in scope and specific to the actual strategies that they are, but there are areas of commonality. And we've worked with those units of council that hold those strategies to ensure that any implementation under the broader and the more higher level community strategy, those areas of commonality are included in our implementation plan. There is an internal implementation plan that has levels of service across the organisation attached to each action. And some of those will be the responsibility of other units of council that hold the ownership of those strategies. But every action has an associated level of service that's already budgeted for through our long-term plan. So there's no additional resources required at this stage.
Thanks for that, Claire. Is that all good with you, Jimmy?
I understand, yeah, but I just want to, remind the staff, because this strategy most important is for future implementation, and also we have the reasonable, sufficient budget to support for the implementation. This is my concern, because we already council published lots of the existing strategy. However, there's a gap between our funding provision and our implementation for all those strategy. This is my particular concern. I do hope this strategy can be avoid happen again. Yes.
Thanks, Jimmy. It sounds like it's covered. Yanni, and then Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Just a specific question on the actions. Has each action been costed?
Each action will have been. Oh, sorry. Am I on?
Yes, you are. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
There's a small echo, but it's fine.
Each action will have been costed, but we haven't specifically done that against the levels of service. And we're really happy to go back and do that and cost those out for you.
So where people are frustrated at the length of time that it takes for council to respond through, resolutions that are passed, how will the strategy help address that when it talks about effective decision making at a local level without additional resource?
I think the strategy is not only about what we do, but about how we do it. And I think we have signalled very clearly in this new strategy that a new way of working is required. And we think that if we do that, we can do that within our existing levels of service, as I've said. But it is actually a new way of how we're going to work, how we're going to be accountable, and how we're going to engage the community in partnership much more than we have done previously.
So Claire, one thing that we've discussed actually earlier this morning was the potential for during sort of annual plan and long-term plan processes, making sure that the actual plans and strategies that we have are highlighted and not just the levels of service, so that we can make good budgeting decisions around implementation of the strategies rather than just the levels of service. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
So I just had several more questions. Wanted to check around, so if I look at the actions, for example, it just seems to me that we're still missing measurables. So we want to improve the perception of safety, but we're not saying how much, just to give you one tangible example on page 60. So it says we will increase positive perception of Central City after dark and encourage community activities that increase volunteering. Do we have any actual targets that we can put in so that we can monitor against the things that we say we're going to do?
Absolutely, and that was going to come after the draft strategy comes back, and that would be our internal implementation, setting those targets. So that's another body of work that we'll be undertaking after our consultation, making sure that the community are happy with our general direction. We'll be setting those targets. And
I guess the question is, how does the community have a say in what those targets are, or whether they are realistic or aspirational or achievable, if we don't put them out in the consultation document?
Well, we can definitely do that before we go out to consultation if that is what if that's what the committee want us to do, is to set those targets.
I don't know how others feel, but personally, I think it's good to set targets with our community rather than after we've adopted it. The final question I just wanted to ask was...
Sorry, hang on, Yanni, can we just get a bit of advice from John and maybe Katie on doing that as well? Thanks, John.
Thank you, Sarah. We're really at a stage where we wish the community and council, in considering the community's views, to give us a definite steer before we determine targets. After we get this steer, we'd want to work with our partner groups, say in the inner city, say City Mission, Police and so forth, to determine a target collaboratively rather than impose one and then go out for consultation. So this is an iterative process. We believe that we are now at a stage where community consultation is vital to continue, and we would prefer not to delay the actually going out and getting the community's views too much longer. We don't want to lose momentum, and we want to engage at the right time rather than engage on a fait accompli.
Right. And the final question I had was, it talks about community boards. And so can you tell me what the strategy is going to do differently with community boards to make sure that they're more effective and that they reflect community desires and aspirations as we're told in this document on page 62? And yeah, I was just really keen to understand what this means for our local community boards, what changes will be done as a result of the strategy, if it's agreed, to improve decision making at that local level and community engagement. Thank you.
I think, Yanni, if we improve our partnerships at a local level with community, it will definitely improve the community board's ability to make decisions based on what the communities want. I do think that there is room for us to work on the community board plans to make sure that they are reflective of what the community are wanting going forward as well. So I think that the strategy confirms the work that our staff do out in the local communities. It also provides us with an opportunity to improve the connections between community boards and the community. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question.
Not really. I think
no.
If you look at, like, for example, local issues in our area where community come to the community board, they raise an issue, they're then told that it can't be addressed because it's not in the community board plan, so they have to wait for the community board plan. It gets put in the community board plan, but there's no funding through council's budget to do what's in the community board plan, so then they're told they have to wait for the annual plan. It doesn't get approved through the annual plan. It's told that it has to go through the LTP. Then it goes to the LTP and it's ruled out of order and said that it's for the community board to fund. And that takes about 3 years. So I can't see, I think the key issue is the way council deals with community boards and how we resource community boards to actually do the things that local people are asking. And I guess what I don't see in this, I see a lot of the right language, but I don't see what's actually going to be done differently if there's not resource being put into making sure that that can happen in a more timely way.
Thank you, Yanni.
John, do you have a response to that one?
Yes, only that I think there will be each community board has a different way of working. Each community board has some subtle differences in how it engages with its community and different experiences. I can say that there's now a level of service over the production and the regular reporting of community board plans. They are now official council plans. A report will be brought back to this committee later in the year over the achievement of the last year's board plan. That's the probably appropriate forum for all of these issues, performance, non-performance, to be teased out in a citywide committee of the council and feedback brought back to the boards themselves. There's also a level of service whereby council officers have to contact a certain number of community groups through the year, gain an appraisal of how well or not we are doing, and report that back to the community board and back to this committee. There's also the ongoing work on community board delegations and subsidiarity, the localised decision making. And from time to time, not every aspect of every single community board plan will be immediately attainable. Some are deliverable quickly, some are longer term projects, and that's the very nature of having a comprehensive plan. That's probably about it, Sarah.
Thanks, John. Okay, now we have Anne and Jimmy and Yanni, your hands are both up still. So if you could take those down, that'd be great. Anne?
Sorry, I don't know how to disappear
Okay,
Lisa.
if someone else could do that for Jimmy,
Someone
that's
can
great.
do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Mike.
Kia ora, Claire and Katie. This is, firstly, congratulations on all the huge effort that you've put into getting as much feedback as possible from as many diverse groups as possible. And that's reflected in the strategy. But going forward in terms of engagement, and Katie, this is a question for you. Given that you've identified that there are many groups in our communities who are difficult to engage with, for many reasons, there are barriers. I'm just wondering how you're going to, what kind of strategies are you going to use to make sure that you connect with those people who might have, English language as a second language, for example, or who may not be confident in engaging with local authorities in any way. So I'm just interested to hear how you're going to get this out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, are you going to start with this one? I can if you'd like me to.
Yeah,
Katie, it'd be great. Yep.
Yep. So, I mean, obviously we've got some challenges. Am I coming up on screen?
You are.
Sorry. Oh, great. Excellent. We have some challenges, obviously, at this time, but we will be making the most of our existing channels. Claire has made sure that it's going to be translated. The information, not the full strategy, but information about the strategy is translated into 12 different languages. Claire is very well connected. And we'll be making sure that the groups know that this consultation is happening. We're looking at putting in as much kind of like flexibility into how people would like to give their submissions as possible. So if traditionally, obviously, we rely on the written. However, for this one, we are looking at as if people would like to do it orally, if people would like to do it with video. We're trying to think as broadly as we possibly can on how people might like to provide us with feedback as part of this. And and then obviously face-to-face is a hugely important aspect of this, and we do have a huge number of drop-ins for this engagement. Obviously, that's a little up in the air at the moment. So we're looking at how we can move that online. And if that's not appropriate, then I guess what other ways that we can connect in with different groups to make sure that they're aware of their opportunity to have their say, and that if they want to, that they can.
Thanks,
Great.
Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Yep, just a follow-up
Your
question.
video is off, Anne. Just saying.
Yes, I realised that. Sorry. I'm not sure how that happened. There we go. It's not coming up. Sorry, something's going on here.
Yeah, thanks.
Try again. No good. Anyway, just in terms of targets, Yanni was talking about targets before. Do you have you identified particular groups that you want to make sure that you connect with, and how will you know that you have?
Anne, are you talking about the consultation, or
Yes,
yes, yeah. Well, we're all pretty well connected across the city with either our own local community groups and also across the Metropolitan area. In the pre-engagement, we identified a wide range of community groups that we wanted and people that we wanted to talk to that don't usually either have an opportunity to submit or don't feel confident in coming forward to council. And an example of that was working with the City Mission men's and women's groups, are quite a vulnerable and marginalised group of the community. So we'll be going back to speak to those people who have helped us in the development of the strategy. We understand that there are communities that aren't confident in participating in the democratic process. They are those communities from diverse ethnic backgrounds, the disability community as well. So we are aware of those groups, and we will be approaching those leaders individually to see how best they would like to engage with this process.
Okay, is that all good, Anne?
Yeah, that's good, thank you. And I'm not sure why my video is not up, but maybe Sam can help me with it's not coming up from my end.
Right, thank you. Mike.
Thank you, and thanks for everything. It's really, really good. But there's just one. I don't normally like to wordsmith during these types of meetings, but I just noticed in the diagram you have on the agenda page 54, you use the word mana whenua, and I'm just wondering, really, that should be tangata whenua if we're talking about the people.
Page 54.
Yeah, the wee diagram.
Is this the primary relationship?
Yes. Yes.
Description?
Yes, and you've got the wee diagram.
Yeah, our primary relationship from a governance perspective is with mana whenua, and we've taken our guidance from Kaharoa and Shane on that.
I don't. So I don't disagree with the relation being with mana whenua. I'm talking about the diagram itself, where you have the circle and you have tangata tiriti at the bottom, which is obviously people that are not tangata whenua. So if you're looking at the top one, which is mana whenua, which is obviously they have authority over the land, actually tangata whenua are the people. But if you've had advice, that's right, that's fine, but it's not my understanding.
Yes. We have.
No, Mike's right. Mike's right. The diagram should say tangata whenua. It should. It's what it says in the brackets underneath.
I'll go back.
It does. 3 lines underneath. It does give tangata whenua. Yeah.
Cool.
But you will be allowed to do those minor tweaks anyway.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's great. Thanks for pointing that out, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other further questions? If not, do we have someone to move the recommendations? Mike, you moving? Great. Do I have a seconder? Melanie? Okay. Any debate? Yanni, and then Leanne, then Jimmy.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the work that staff have done on this. I think there's been a lot of good work go into it. I just feel that we're missing several opportunities. One is that we really need to think about our community boards and local service delivery. We need to think about resourcing the boards to actually be responsive to community needs. And I just don't see that the strategy actually deals with that, even though it makes all the right noises towards doing it. It doesn't actually provide the mechanism. So I personally would have liked this strategy to be much more focused with clear targets and clear levels of resourcing to achieve the things that we say we're going to do. But in my view, there's a lot of stuff in here that sounds really good. The problem is that we know in reality that these things will not happen unless they're resourced and unless we make a commitment to resourcing it. So I'm really concerned about the strategy from that point of view. The thing is that, you know, it shouldn't be this difficult, but we should set clear targets and talk to our community about the cost of achieving those targets so that we can get feedback from people over what they want us to do. what I'm worried about is if we put out a strategy that doesn't have clear targets, then the community find it really hard to give meaningful feedback and engagement. So I'm really concerned at that. The other thing is that there is some really good stuff in here, and I think there's some acknowledgement of gaps where we haven't been as focused as we should have in the past. And I think just to highlight one of those is our engagement with Pacific peoples. So I really, endorse having reference to that. But again, I come back to, unless we're able to commit to resource, then these things won't happen. And we know through the annual plan and the long-term plan processes that actually the system doesn't work. If you take the community boards, for example, we're now being told at our community board that we have to purchase services off the city council for anything to happen. And we have to fund things through discretionary to do basic operational things that our community have requested. It is a very inefficient and timely process that does not deliver good outcomes in a reasonable timeframe for our communities. So I think I won't support this strategy today. I think there's more work that needs to be done before it goes out for public consultation. I think it's got a lot of good things in it. I think the other key concern is that, the resilient Greater Christchurch plan, it just appears like, again, we're adopting strategies, but we really do need to have a clear way of measuring and monitoring against those strategies, and not just create strategies that then reinvent other strategies that we've already adopted that haven't achieved what we said we were going to achieve. Thank you.
Thanks, Yanni. Leanne.
Thank you. I just want to speak briefly, and it's really around the introduction and background to this, because this is such a substantial step forward from where we were prior to the earthquakes. The introduction says that the people of Autotahi Christchurch have experienced significant disruption over the past 10 years as the city recovers from the effects of a devastating series of earthquakes, other events such as floods, fires and terror attacks, and most recently a pandemic, have added to these stressors. Our communities have navigated house repairs, rebuilds, relocations, school closures, protracted insurance negotiations, employment and business insecurity, trauma, personal loss and uncertainty. Some of us continue to struggle with the effects of the last decade's events. But it goes on to say, so I just wanted to kind of put that in that context of where we've come from in the last 10 years. But it's the next paragraph that just speaks to me about where we've come to and where we're going. These collective stressors have also been the catalyst for creativity, community leadership, innovation and collective action across the city and within local communities. We want to build on this and enhance the way we work together through a range of partnerships. The time for central government and local government to think that they can do things for communities so that communities can be strengthened, communities can become more resilient, that somehow central government or local government can do it for them. Those days are over, and we're looking right at a new way of thinking, which is essentially that we look to our community. It's the community that has agency under this strategy, not the do for, but the do together and what we can achieve together. And that to me came through loud and clear in our LTP process. So I'm very happy to see this go out for consultation.
That's great. Thanks, Leanne. Jimmy.
Thank you. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the officers, staff, particularly over the past almost 1 year for establish this comprehensive report, and also through the kind of informal process, my understanding. Second is we are all aware the function, the purpose of the council strategy. Consider two other aspects. First aspect is for the complying with the council's strategic framework, particularly regarding to the principles, committee outcomes, and the strategic priorities, especially complying with the committee the outcomes, because they consist of social, cultural, economic, and environment well-beings. The other aspect is for the implementation of this strategy to achieve the council's committee outcome. So if we review the draft strategy, because like page 66, 75, 79, we can see these strategies kind of umbrella the huge strategy, including quite a few affiliate strategy. So how to, kind of distinguish each the strategy of council already published, and also this strategy clearly to avoid for the implementation for the in the future. This will be very crucial. The other one is we still need to consider, seriously regarding to the budget, whether we have allocated sufficient budget to support, for the implementation of the strategy. That's very crucial. The other one, like Yanni in particular mentioned, community board is the grassroots and the local level, the organization. So they are very crucial organization for the implementation of that strategy. So how to strengthen the communication with the community board and support the community board have reasonable resources for implementation of that strategy. That's very crucial. So in principle, I support this draft strategy, go to consultation, and after feedback, when we establish the detailed the implementation plan, we can consider all those factors. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Anne.
Kia ora, and I am having technical difficulties that we can't fix, unfortunately, so I am off screen. But I wanted to once again thank this Claire and her team for the amazing amount of work that's gone into this. Huge effort it shows a real desire to be inclusive, to really get out there and talk with every sector of our community. You've done a tremendous job of that. I think that we are recognising in this that our city is changing, has changed and is changing. I think the challenge is really to get the message across that we really want to hear from everybody in our community, and to really get the message across that their voices are valued and important. So that's a bit of a challenge, but I think listening to Katie and the great work that's being done there to engage with people, to get their feedback, to talk to them about this, I look forward to having a tremendously strong response from the community about this. I think you talk in the document about strengthening leadership and getting leadership coming from different parts of our community, and later we'll be talking about funding, and I think our youth, our young people, and really strengthening them to come through into leadership is one way that we can, when we fund those things, we can get that happening. So just a little plug there. So thanks again for the work, and look forward to hearing feedback from the community.
That's great. Any further debate? No, in that case,
look forward to hearing.
Someone in the background? No? Okay, in that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your thumbs.
I'll say aye.
Well, yeah, you've got just everyone's mics, and it's easier visually to see that.
Yeah, but I don't think you can see.
Yeah, no. Any against? Yanni, and so Yanni, do you want that recorded against? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I think Aaron's online too without video, who I saw before.
Okay. Where is Aaron? Aaron,
yes.
You may not have been here at the beginning of the meeting. I'm not quite sure when you arrived, but one of the guidelines for the meetings that was sent through in an email is to keep your video on. That way you'll appear on the first screen, and that people are aware when you're there and when you're not there. It's part of the requirements for running these meetings.
Right, okay. Why is most of the videos are off?
They're staff members rather than elected members. So for elected member, attendance is recorded for meetings and keeping your video on. And if you need to leave at any stage, then you need to email the Secretariat so that it can be recorded.
But if the video email wouldn't receive it, I've left?
That's right.
Yeah.
So Anne's having a glitch at the moment, you might have heard. But you'll need to turn your video on.
It's a tech glitch in the device. Yeah, unfortunately, nothing much we can do about it at the moment. But when we have a break, I'll talk to somebody and see what we can do.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cool.
So just waiting, Aaron. Thanks.
Sweet. Yes.
View video. Okay. Right. So was there anyone else against? Since I can't see. Aaron, which way were you voting on the adoption of the draft? Because I wasn't able to see or hear you.
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you. Okay. In that case, I declare that carried, and we'll move on to the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. Aaron, can you please adjust your camera so that more than your ceiling is available?
Oh, really? I can
Aaron,
see
you could
me.
choose to waste our time, or you could just do what everyone else is doing. That would be great.
So where did the rule come from? I was in the waiting room from 9:20.
So, John, are you able to give Aaron a rundown of the rules around meeting online, please?
Do you want to take an adjournment and sort it out rather than?
Can we just truck on? I really don't care. I'd just rather get on with the meeting, to be honest. I don't need to see Aaron.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a council meeting, why doesn't Leanne chair it? I thought we were reviewing the committees at some point.
Aaron, we're in a Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee meeting that is being live streamed.
Yeah.
And one of the requirements for council meetings and committee meetings and understanding orders is for people to be present, and it's not possible to see if you're present when we can't see you.
Right.
That was clearly emailed out and is on the run sheet that was emailed out as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just listen.
Right, we'll move on to the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. So we have one application, and Sam is here to talk to that.
We can take the report as read.
Thanks for that. Any questions from people? No. Do we have a mover? Pauline, seconder? Yanni? Any debate? No. Okay, in that case, all those in favour, please raise your thumbs.
Can I just have the video back?
Any against?
No.
So no for Aaron.
Yeah, no for Sam as well.
No for Sam. Anyone else? Any abstentions? Right, declare that carried. Thank you very much.
Sorry, did you get Tim?
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble. I'm against that one as well.
Okay. I can't see everyone when we're doing that, so people just need to actually, if they're against a motion, then people will need to actually turn their mics on and say no and make sure that that's recorded. Thank you. Right, we'll move down now to the Strengthening Communities Fund. Yanni, would you like to introduce us as the chair of the working group?
Okay. Right, just to acknowledge staff for the work that they've done on this year. Actually, staff have picked up on something that I think is really helpful in terms of how we did the assessment at the workshop, or the discussions at the workshop, and that was that each of the matrices now have a very clear staff recommendation so I hope that format has made it easier for people to follow the rationale behind the quantum that staff are recommending to fund or otherwise. And the other thing is that we've allocated them across sectors and groups of sectors. So I think that makes it a lot easier to compare against similar types of activities in terms of the funding. So I just want to acknowledge the work that the staff have done in that regard. I think the reality is that obviously we have a huge amount of uncertainty with COVID-19 in our society at the moment, and a lot of these applications were done before the current lockdown. So I think we'll just have to have a degree of understanding. But I think the recommendations from the workshop, there's a few that have changed from the staff recommendations. There's been a robust process around discussing it. And I'm happy to put forward this report to move it and to put it on the table for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Yanni. Do I have a seconder? Tim, that's great. Thank you very much. Right, do we have any questions of staff? Tim.
Thank you. Just to clarify, if someone is putting forward an increase to anything, that money would be taken. Start again. The money that's left over in this will go across to the discretionary response fund. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the workshop on the 30th of July from the funding subcommittee recommended allocating 135,000 to the DRF. Additional to that, there's still another 5,000 that could be allocated and still allow for that recommendation to be completed. If the committee choose to increase by more than 5,000, then that would come off that 135 that's going to the discretionary response fund.
And as mentioned before by Councillor Hanson, we are in very uncertain times with regards to our second lockdown. So there may be organisations who will be having to recalculate what they're doing once we know where the end of this is. And so that there could be further pressures or increased pressures on that discretionary response fund. Would that be a fair statement?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Right, any further questions? Jimmy and then Andrew.
Thank you. I ask staff, because council, we have done those workshop about more than 3 weeks ago. We have through the Q&A to identify, distinguish each application. But from last workshop until today, this around 24 days, is there any application that have any additional information or have any different situation? Can you share with us?
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Councillor Chin. So other than the change that we're all experiencing with this current lockdown, there's no additional specific information from the applicants that's come through in that time period.
That's great, thank you. Andrew.
Thank you. Just in terms of conflicts, I know there were a number of matters that would have been reported for the workshop. I've got a conflict because I'm on the board of the O'Kane's Bay Museum. I don't know whether the others are carried through from the workshop to this meeting, but just in the interest of transparency, I'll note that one.
Thanks. Can we just check with Sam, which conflicts have you got recorded through from the workshop? So Sam Kelly.
Sorry, I don't have them to hand, but I'll just flick them through via email, and then any additions, you can just reply to that. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. And so we'll just make sure that people, because people declared those on the day, that they'll be carried through.
Can I just?
So Yanni mentioned one before. I mentioned one before. Andrew's mentioned one. Yanni?
I've just got them here, Sarah. Can I just go through them quickly?
That'd be great. Thanks.
So Councillor Coker declared an interest in 37 Canterbury Neighbourhood Support. Councillor Scandrett declared an interest in number 1 Christchurch Operatic Incorporated Showbiz. Councillor Templeton declared an interest in number 5 Wolston Brass. Councillor Cotter declared an interest in item 73 Keep Christchurch Beautiful, and the Deputy Mayor declared an interest in 88 O'Kane's Bay Māori and Colonial Museum Trust. I don't know if there's any others, but those were the ones that we had recorded.
Great, thank you. That's really useful. Okay, so we've had this
Sarah,
move.
Could I just record a non-vote, because I haven't gone through the complete list for conflicts, so I'm just going to conflict myself generally. Is that all right?
Sure.
Cool.
Sarah, I've just got one question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Hey Sam, it's just on Arana Park. So it's good we've got the recommendation in there, but I'm just wondering, did we proceed any further with, I mean, this is obviously a 1 year solution and they'll be in difficult times now as well. Have we engaged with them at a board level or management level on helping them for a long-term sustainable solution? Because I thought we may have got to a point where that would be a resolution if you needed direction.
Sure, I'd like to bring Joshua Wharton in on to answer this question. Thanks, Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, hey, Councillor McDonald. I sit with the board reasonably regularly. They're reasonably convinced that the solution that they need is investment from councils. They're willing to accept advice from multiple positions, but they're relatively convinced at this current stage that what they need is regional investment from the local TLAs.
Yeah, I guess the issue I have with this, is what we raised in the workshop, was this is a one-off payment. It's not a long-term solution. So I thought, and look, I've probably got it wrong, but I thought we potentially were going to look at granting them this and then having something so that when they come back next year, we've kind of got some comfort that, and I'm sure they're doing everything at their end, but also if we need to feed into a long-term plan or talk to the neighbouring councils, we can. So is that something we can give you direction on here, or is it something we do later down the line? I just don't want to get to this point next year again.
It's probably not something that would we decide around this particular decision, but certainly would appreciate any insight into that you might have.
Well, it's not an insight. It's a wanting an action from staff so that when we get a funding from them, because we will get a funding application next year. I see John's, he might have an answer. Thanks, Josh.
It's Gary here. Hey, I think we can take on board exactly what you're asking for, Councillor, that we will have discussions with Orana and we'll start them early to make sure when we get to a position next year, we're either have a plan that everyone is agreeable to, or we know what the obstructions are and we will come back to you with that. But we will take that on as staff. We'll increase the relationship.
Thanks, Gary. That's great. Yep. Cool. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. Just Gary and Sam, we did have an outcome from the workshop to provide additional advice around Orana Park. I appreciate that. Obviously, with the lockdown and with COVID, things have been, condensed in terms of work that we need to do. But is that advice being worked on, and could that advice be circulated to us with it picking up on Sam's point with some recommendations at some stage in the future? We were hoping to have it for this meeting, but I don't think it's been provided.
Yeah, look, I think in all honesty, it is a massive question. It is a big question, and a little bit like what you talked about at the start, there's other organisations in the same situation. So no, in terms of we haven't got any further with it, but we're committed to doing that. I think we probably need some direction around what those other organisations are as well that probably sit in the same kind of situation.
Can I suggest, as the chair of that workshop and to the chair of this committee, that we flag this as an item we'd like to have as part of one of our Tuesday briefings, where we can get the advice from staff and consider a way forward, a more sustainable way forward. So accepting that we're going to make the funding decision for this year, is that something that we could do? I'm going to ask the chair of this committee whether she's happy with that approach.
Yeah, I don't get to choose exactly what goes on the Tuesday briefings, but I'd be happy getting advice back. And if a Tuesday briefing is warranted, then that'd be great. But I think that staff will continue to work with Orana Park on a sustainable future and funding options going forward. Is that right?
Sorry, the point is that we've asked for that advice to be done for this meeting and we don't have it. I think the best thing to do would be to ensure that we get the advice and have a chance to discuss it at a governance level. I don't mind what forum that takes, but I think it is important to recognise that there was a request for that advice for this meeting. We don't have it let's set up a process to ensure that we can consider it in the near future.
Thanks. John had some advice there.
Thank you, sir. We've got a request for advice. As Councillor Johansson said, it's been 3 weeks since the meeting. The staff concerned have been focused on putting this report together. We will get that advice and we will come back to this committee, probably in a publicly excluded discussion, workshop format, and seek further direction. We'll focus on Arana Park first, and as Gary said, if there are any other organisations in the same boat, we'll have a discussion with the committee on those as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. Any further questions on the report? No? Okay. In that case, we have a mover and a seconder, and we'll move into debate. Any debate? Yanni? Or is that your hand up for that or not? You're muted though. No, you're still muted. You're still muted, Yanni.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Oh, I keep getting muted by the host. Can you hear me now? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, just to quickly say, so just to acknowledge the community organisations we have in our city, and I just wanted to particularly just highlight, a number who are working with the people that are really impacted with the lockdown. So just to acknowledge all the good work that we have happening in our city from so many groups. And so obviously council supporting a number of those through this process is really critical to our city's wellbeing. So I just wanted to acknowledge, I've acknowledged the staff in the introduction, and I just in conclusion wanted to acknowledge the work that a lot of these community groups are doing to look after the wellbeing and welfare of our citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, Yanni. Anne.
Yeah, kia ora. I'd like to make move an amendment to the recommendations, please, that the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee makes a grant of 56k, the requested amount, from the 21-22 Strengthening Communities Fund to the Christchurch Youth Council towards wages and training costs.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that one?
Happy to second.
Thanks, Jake. Okay, I'm just moving down to the thing. I'm just going to step out. Okay. Sorry, what number was that, Anne?
Sorry. I don't know what number it is, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, because we were asked if you had amendments to be able to
I may have
identify
put
the
it in the
number
email. Sorry, I haven't got it in front of me.
Okay.
I think it may be
Sam,
20.
do you know?
It's item
21. 18. Thanks, Joe.
18, it is 2.
18.
Okay, so
Thank
the
you.
current amount is 35. You've asked for that to move to 56.
Yes.
Okay, and so that will be a difference of 21,000, and that will come off 5 off the Strengthening Communities and 16 off the Discretionary Response Fund.
Correct.
Okay, and move into debate, and we might just do one debate and then move the amendment first and then the substantive. So we'll just continue with one debate rather than a separate debate on the amendment.
Kia ora.
Thanks. You move into your debate now.
Okay, thank you. So from what we've seen this morning already, the community grants outcomes is, the point of it is to increase community engagement and local decision making is one of the key outcomes. The Christchurch City Council the Christchurch Youth Council is in a very unique position that it offers training and mentoring into civic decision making, civic activity. Just recently they had an evening where those that were interested in becoming part of the Christchurch Youth Council was held, and they had 28 young people who were interested in becoming involved in the Christchurch Youth Council. The coordinator acts as a mentor and a tutor to train young people into these processes. So really this is a nurturing ground for our future leaders. And we have got great examples of this in action. Many of you will know Mia Sutherland, who was actually on the front page of the paper the other day wearing a mask alongside Leanne and others. She's been incredibly involved in the schools strike for climate, amongst other things. She was mentored and trained through the Christchurch Youth Council. and now sits as a representative on Te Paipakari, the Youth Standing Committee, an example of the great work that's being done here. So in terms of what we want to achieve, also through our Autotahi Christchurch community strategy to develop leadership in groups that don't normally aren't strongly represented. This is an example of what we can do here. So the coordinator is paid not as well as she should be, and I believe we employ her as a city council, and we have a responsibility to compensate her correctly for the valuable work that she does. So very hopefully you'll consider this as you make your decisions.
Thanks, Anne. Jimmy.
Thank you. Yes. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the staff, the efforts and contributions to prepare this comprehensive report. I just want to remind all our fellow councillors, it has been taken for 4 hours for reviewing and discussing each application of all the applications during the workshop more than 3 weeks ago. During the workshop, through the Q&A, each councillors highlight all those concerning the applications and the style in response, interpretation, and then also explanation. And also we have, informal, the vote about all those concerning the items. My personal view, it is the fair process, very fair process. Unless there's any additional information different from the workshop on specific application. Otherwise, I stick to support the workshop recommendation, and also just earlier, the staff reply to my questions from previous workshop until now. There is no any additional information, and any of the circumstances have been any change. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Tim.
Thank you. Look, I seconded and I will support the substantive. As I said, we are in our second lockdown. There are a lot of organisations that don't know the extent of damage or hurt they will be facing in the short term coming towards them. I think it is, I just don't think it's appropriate for us or councillors to have a second crack at the cherry after spending so much time looking at this with staff. So I'm really disappointed at this. And I think to look at the Christchurch Youth Council with such a large increase or proposed large increase, I just don't think it's appropriate. So I think the level of remuneration for the coordinator is respectful at the moment, but there are a lot of groups, as I said, that are facing some really hard times. They don't know what the fallout is at the moment because they're in the middle of it. So I think it's priority to support the Discretionary Response Fund, which will be, as I asked the question of staff, which will be approached by many organisations. We're not out of this yet, but there could well be another lockdown in the future. And I think we've got to be very respectful and responsible and just hold our breath and see where we're going to go. So I will not be supporting the Anne's movement. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Pauline.
Unmuted. Oh, look, I'm in a similar vein to Tim here because I feel that we have done a lot of work on this. Look, every single organisation in here is worth more money than what we're able to give them. And I think that's a given. We've all got our, pet ones that we want to push forward. I do respect the Youth Council work, and I really value the work that Anne Galloway is doing, particularly with the youth. And I appreciate how you do want to raise that. And I do feel that a jump of 21,000 on a recommendation for 35 is just too big a jump. I would have supported a smaller one, but I think that that's just massive. So I reluctantly won't support that today. There may be a way that if they come up with a new project or a sub-project, or they need an extra boost somehow, they may be able to come back to the discretionary response fund, because that will be holding the balance of this money. So yeah, unfortunately, at that level of another 21,000, I really can't support that today. But I also want to thank the staff for the incredible amount of work. This is such a difficult piece of work, and the workshop we had was very valuable too. We learned a lot about these organisations and the benefit they bring to our city. So I'll be supporting the substantive today.
Thanks so much. Mike.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to foreshadow a motion in case Anne's amendment loses, and that's actually to increase that the youth council by 5,000. Look, I don't like doing this type of process in a meeting. I think actually the workshop was really actually good, and we got to a good point. But look, Anne makes some good comments, but I don't think the appropriate way is to come to a meeting and raise it by so much. We've got 5,000 left in the in this pot, which I think is actually, it's a good opportunity to actually pass that on to the youth council, who actually do some really good work and would actually benefit and be able to use this extra money wisely. But I can't agree to such a large increase at this large minute. Everything else I'm also very happy with, but if Anne's amendment fails, which I won't be voting for, I'd like to foreshadow a 5,000 increase.
Thanks so much, Mike. Any further debate on that? No, in that case, I will put Anne's amendment first, which is to raise the the Christchurch Youth Council funding by 21,000 to 56. Sorry, someone else there? No? Okay, and it's moved by Anne and seconded
Sorry,
by...
Sarah.
Yep.
Are you? Yeah, sorry. I would like to just speak to it quickly before you put it, because I've tried to get having difficulties here with the technology. So
Anne,
can I just...
Anne, hang on. The mover of an amendment doesn't get a right of reply.
Oh, right. Okay.
The mover of the substantive does.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
yeah, sorry.
Right, sorry.
Yanni, would you like to wrap up?
No, I think I felt like I've already wrapped up. Just to say that, I mean, I'll just make a brief comment, which is we need to review the MOU we have with the Youth Council. I support the Youth Council. We have a youth action plan. One of the outcomes of the LTP was to get a report back, which we'll be discussing tomorrow, on how we review the youth action plan. So I'm very sympathetic to funding the Youth Council to the appropriate level. It is just really hard to receive an amendment on the day of the meeting when we've had a workshop, in fairness to my council colleagues. So, I think we've got other processes where we should consider the level of funding for the Youth Council. And I just don't think that raising this funding now, I think the key thing is if we can get something back, that we have the opportunity to consider additional funding. And I think staff are of the opinion that if we get new information, we can do that.
Thanks for that. Right, so we'll move Anne's amendment first. So anyone those in favour of increasing it to the requested amount of 56,000 from 35, please put actually thumbs up, but the screen split, so it's hard to see everyone. So actually we might have,
Would you like it to
scrolling through. Yeah, that's probably going to be easiest for this.
Okay, so on the amendment, Councillor Turner?
No.
Councillor Chen?
No.
Councillor Chu?
No.
Councillor Coker?
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Councillor Cotter?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
No.
Councillor Galloway?
Yes.
Councillor Goff?
I think he's left.
Councillor Johansson,
I'll abstain.
Councillor Kewen,
No.
Councillor McDonald,
No.
Councillor McClellan,
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett,
No.
Councillor Templeton,
No.
the Mayor,
I'm not voting. I'm stepping
Leanne.
back from the decision. I've already said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
abstaining from the entire. Yeah.
So that's 3 votes for, 9 votes against, and 2 abstentions.
Right, so that's not carried, but we do have a foreshadowed amendment, which is to use the remaining $5,000 in the Strengthen Communities Fund and raise the Christchurch Youth Council from $35,000 to $40,000 by Councillor Davidson. Councillor Galloway, would you like to second that?
Indeed, I would. Thank you.
Right. I don't think we need a new debate, but Joe, I think we're going to have to move that.
That's fine. So this is for the foreshadowed motion of an increase of 5,000 on the grant. Councillor Kewen,
No.
Councillor McClellan,
Yes.
Councillor McDonald,
No.
Councillor Davidson,
Yes.
Councillor Galloway,
Sorry, yes.
Councillor Scandrett,
No.
Councillor Chu,
No.
Councillor Coker,
Yes.
Councillor Cotter,
You're muted still, Pauline.
Councillor Cotter. We'll come back to
Okay,
her.
I'm just scrolling through and I can't see her on the screen. So maybe she's dropped off.
Okay, Councillor Chen.
No.
I've noticed an abstention from the Mayor. Councillor Templeton.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Turner.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson, abstention.
No, I'm fine with this one. It's fine.
Okay. Councillor Goff, no longer here. Okay. Councillor Cotter. No longer here.
No.
That's 7 votes for, 5 votes against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, so that's carried. Okay, so we'll now move to the substantive.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move through to the substantive, which now includes that. I'll just move back to my...
I'll be withdrawing my seconding of it because I just think it's wrong
includes
to
something
approach it.
that you... Okay, that's fine. Do we have a new seconder for the substantive?
Yes.
And
Melanie.
On Melanie. Okay.
Or if you can see someone else, go for that.
No, that's fine. Okay, so that's Melanie. Okay, and people have already have their votes recorded against that particular funding. So that's fine in that one there. So that becomes the substantive. What I might do though, because that one has already passed as an allocation of funding, what I will do is I will make it, the resolution is everything else. So all of the other funding recommendations from that workshop. And that way people don't feel the need to vote against everything just for the sake of that one piece of funding. Is that clear for everyone?
Okay.
Great. Okay, in that case, I will put the remainder of the funding allocations and resolutions. All those in favour, please put your thumbs up. Okay,
Aye.
and anyone, yep, so Anne is an aye and Aaron?
Aye.
That's great. Is there anyone against? No, in that case, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we move through to the Autotahi Community Housing Trust lease renewal. And Bruce, could you please introduce this for us?
Good morning, everyone. So this relates to the lease with the Autotahi Community Housing Trust. The lease is up for renewal this year. It's the first of the first 5-year term. The decision to renew is a delegated one, and generally with the terms of the lease is something that council would just approve because of the specific terms. However, in this case, Autotahi Community Housing Trust has requested some changes, and some of those changes go to some decisions that council made originally when it was setting up the arrangements and putting the lease in place. So we thought it prudent to test those matters with you. And specifically, the matters that we're looking at are the length of term and the clause that allows council to, or either party to give a no cause reason to terminate the lease. So they were originally, those two terms were originally set up because council wished to retain flexibility to respond to changing circumstances and opportunity. What we're proposing is because the performance of the trust has been very good so far, they have achieved what we set out in terms of improving the financial sustainability of the portfolio. They are driving the development of new social housing, that we think that there's a case for some additional term, which we have put in, which is an extra 10 years. And in terms of the arrangements and being flexible, we're suggesting we extend that out from 48 months to 5 years. So I'm in your hands now. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bruce. Do we have questions from people? Sam.
Yeah, just one. Thanks, Sarah. Bruce, I'm just trying to understand what greater certainty they get. I mean, because they're still quite restricted in terms of their borrowing anyway, aren't they?
They are. There is some of the new borrowing that they're starting to look at, that this will give them a little more certainty over the term of those mortgages. So we're currently putting in place mortgages over our property, but that will release a little bit of their assets that they can then borrow against. And then they also get a good revenue stream from from the government. So they can do that borrowing. That will be over a longer term than in the rest of the lease. So it just provides a little bit of certainty that the whole lease will be in place while they're doing that borrowing.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense. Sarah, if you need, I'm happy to move it, but if someone else wants to.
That'd be great. Thanks, Sam. Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy
Tim?
to second.
Tim's thumb was up before your voice, sorry. Do we have any further questions for Bruce? No, in that case, we have it moved and seconded. Do we have any debate? No, in that case, I will put the motion. I can see everyone on the screen, most people on the screen there. So all in favour, please raise your thumbs.
Aye.
Excellent. And it's a yes from Aaron, and Anne is a yes as well. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bruce. Next, we move through to the council feedback to consultation on changes to Māori wards and constituencies. And we have John to talk to that. John, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Purpose of the reports to approve council feedback on consultation to changes to Māori wards and constituencies. It's very limited. Just some changes and the differences for the establishment of Māori wards and general wards. Shane has discussed this with Papa Te Rinonga, including Te Runanga o Ngā Mata Waka. The submissions
sorry, Brendan.
tomorrow.
Sorry, John. Brendan, can you turn your mic off, please?
Some changes and the differences to the established.
Brendan. Thanks. Continue,
Lovely.
John. Yep.
Yeah, I think we had a discussion, a workshop about this a wee while ago. Feedback must be submitted by Friday. The time frame is incredibly tight. Really, the feedback's self-explanatory. Just to re-emphasise that our Autotahi relationships team has been involved throughout. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for that. Are there any questions for John on this paper? Sam?
Yeah, thanks, John. Just on issue 3, where it says opportunity for public input. So we've obviously got, it says, should councils be required to engage with their community when considering Māori wards? We've said no, but they must have regard for iwi hapu whānau perspectives. Why wouldn't we sort of let everyone have a say, acknowledging that's obviously not consistent with current legislation?
Sam, that's the essentially the advice that we've received from our Ngāi Tahu relationship team. The essentially continuing the current way of doing things. We believe that I guess the background behind that is this can raise some consternation within the community. It can raise all sorts of different issues and opinions, some a lot more broad than the subject matter at hand. Look, however, if that's not the will of the council, we can amend that and send that through. I would also say that this is a preliminary consultation on the drafting of a bill, which will then be consulted upon, and I think the time will be a lot greater for that, and there'll be a lot more supporting information.
Cool, thank you.
All right. Any further questions? No, in that case, do I have someone to move this? Jimmy, it's great, thank you. And do I have a seconder? Sorry, I can't see everyone's screens. Do I have a seconder? Okay, I'm happy to second that. Is there any debate?
Yeah, just briefly, Sarah, I won't support it in this form because I honestly would have preferred that when we talk about requirement of engagement, that it's with everybody. And so I just don't feel comfortable with that.
Thanks, Sam. Any further debate? Tim?
Yeah, look, I'm actually going to agree with Sam. I do think this is the type of thing that really does need to have everybody run by everybody, all our communities, because it does affect it. And so I won't be supporting it in this form. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further debate? No? Okay, in that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour, raise your thumbs, please.
Aye.
And Aaron?
Yeah, aye.
Any against? So that's Sam and Tim. Anyone else against? Catherine? And I couldn't quite see everyone, but I'm assuming there's no one else. Okay, so Catherine, Tim, and Sam against. I declare that carried. Were there any abstentions? No? Okay.
I abstain.
Sorry, I couldn't hear who that was. Mike. Okay.
Sorry, I abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, me as well.
I thought I saw your thumb up, Annie. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, no, I can't do it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, declare that carried. So now we'll move, what we might do, because do people have a lot of questions on the Parks Operations Quarterly Report? So we were due for a break at 11, but I have a feeling there might be more than 6 minutes. But if people are happy to just carry through, then this is our last report. Is that okay? Great. Okay. Okay, so just Yanni, just a heads up, you're sounding like a Dalek at the moment. Okay, someone else. Yanni, I can't understand a word you're saying. You might need to go out.
Yanni needs to log off and log back on again, which is what I did.
Yeah. Okay, so the Parks Operations Quarterly Report. This is the first quarterly report that we're having from Parks. It's really comprehensive. Next time it will come with a short presentation like we had from Sport and Rec, but at this stage Parks staff are quite busy with the work they're doing during lockdown and prepping the parks and things. So that's not available today. Andrew, would you like to introduce the report?
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Nice. And I'm really hoping that all of my team are online as well, but I can't see at this point. So thanks, Sarah. Yeah, this is the first of what will be a quarterly report. Because it takes quite a bit of time to compile, it's kind of a little bit out of date, but to be able to provide you with up-to-date information on things like volunteer numbers for a quarter, etc., we need a bit of time to compile that. So it's broken down into the areas of activity that we have and the responsible managers whom will be available to answer any questions you might have. And it covers off, as you can see, those key activity areas of our daily operations, some of the more significant capital works programs, and the growing area, of course, of community participation. That's probably all from me. I was going to get the guys to introduce their own sections briefly, but it's a question for you, Sarah. Would you like the guys to talk through their own individual section and then take questions on those sections, or just see if there's questions at the end?
What we might do for this report, given the online nature of it, is actually take the report as read. It's really thorough and it's got some really good news in it. But what we might do is actually just have some questions from councillors. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So that's it from me. Over to you guys.
Great. Pauline's got a question, and then Yanni, then Tim.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a lovely report, and I look forward to being back in the chamber when we can have a more detailed presentation from you guys, because this is for me, this is the really good stuff that, well, council does heaps of good stuff. This is really great stuff. My question is actually about the big belly bins. And particularly concerning a local park in my area, St Albans Park, which I think is the busiest park in Christchurch, even though you think it might be the Cashmere Valley Reserve. But we're still having trouble with overflowing bins there. The other two bins have been removed, and it's just down to the one. So I see that you say there on page 18 that you're waiting for the data to be collected to inform changes, and I know you said that the report is a little bit dated by the time we get it. Has that data gathering been completed yet, or is that still an ongoing piece of work?
Al, are you online? Are you able to talk to big belly bins? Sorry, smart bins.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Al's online. Okay.
Oh, sorry, yes, the smart bins. Well, the thing is, we can actually get a memo about this if you like, but we're still, I'm getting a lot of, complaints about the rubbish down there at the park, because it seems to be, it's a capacity issue, and the smart bins should be requesting them to be emptied. So I have brought this up at community board as well repeatedly. Sure. Is there an opportunity, if the bin is not coping, to actually have another bin put in, or is it just one?
Yeah, look, well, there's two aspects to that. One, the contractors and ourselves, we can see the fullness of the bin online all day, every day.
Yeah.
So in theory, it should never get to the overcapacity level. Now, in saying that, part of the deliberate process has been to install the first wave of bins and monitor. And then there are another wave of smart bins coming. And we have been collecting and collating feedback directly from elected members and members of the community, and then we address those. So the installation process is only about 50%.
Andrew, you've dropped out sound-wise.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that was better. Back again.
Sorry. Yeah, I have had a few techo issues. What I was saying, I'm not sure how much you got, but we're 50%
disappeared.
I can hear him.
I can hear him.
Oh,
yeah, I can.
That's weird. I couldn't at all.
Yeah, you're fine, Andrew.
So,
okay.
Okay, you keep going then.
Right.
I can hear it as well.
Thank you. So we're 50, just to recap, we're 50% through the rollout program roughly, probably a little ahead of that. We are monitoring that data. We are hopeful, we welcome the feedback because we get the best information from the community of where the additional bins need to be put in. But just to reassure that we watch and monitor, and I think there's some examples in the report of what that looks like. In saying that, sometimes there's a few technical issues with the messaging coming out of the bins, but nothing untoward. So yeah, we're aware of the feedback about St Albans Park, and we'll be addressing that along with some of the others that have come through as high use, high need.
Yeah, well, that's really helpful response. Thanks, Andrew. So you're 50% through the rollout program, and you're still collecting the data, and when they're full, we should be getting in.
I've just been updated by text. We're 70% through
75 it says in the report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, actually, on the bins, because I know it's a hot topic, in terms of removal of the existing static bins, we're going to implement a communication program where we're going to probably end up putting stickers on the bins, on the existing bins before they're removed, advising them of the program, when the bin's likely to be removed and why, and positive messaging about, taking your rubbish home and all that sort of stuff. So that, and also the ability for people to contact us if they have concerns. So we're going to slap that on the actual bin so that we get feedback from the actual users of the bins, if you like.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yanni, then Tim, then Anne, then Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you. On the bins, one of the things, I guess the most negative feedback I've had is people being able to pick up after their dogs. Are we able to consider putting in some, we do have special dog bins, dog litter bins. Are we able to consider putting in some of those in some of the most popular places for the dogs? Like Hanson's Park is one that comes to mind, but there might be others that the staff are aware of.
Well, there's nothing wrong with putting dog waste in the smart bins, as long as it's in a bag, ideally. I'm not sure how else you'd get it in there. And again, we're pushing quite hard the message of take it home and use your normal red bin disposal processes. And we push that hard during COVID level 4 in particular, of course, because we don't want our staff out there unnecessarily. And they're the messages we're going to promote, Yanni, that you walked out the door with your dog, you walked out the door with the dog bag, you can walk back in the door and put it in your bin. And this is all about minimizing OPEX costs and getting better bang for the buck. So the answer is yes, we can always put more stuff in, but more stuff has to be funded, more stuff has to be renewed, more stuff has to be operationally managed. And we're really trying to steer people in a slightly different direction, which is, be more responsible.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think the other thing with this, I'm still not quite clear when this decision was made. So it was made as part of an LTP workshop, and then it was made, was there a specific resolution through the LTP? Because a number of people in the community have raised to me concern that they would have liked to have had a say on this, but they weren't aware of this being considered. So can you just explain to me what opportunity the public had to give feedback on this decision?
Well, there was essentially no explicit opportunity prior to the smart bins being put in. The decision, as you stated, was made during a workshop and taken as a saving, an OPEX saving, which is now in our budget. So the money's gone from our budget. And so the process in terms of communication and consultation with the community, we're running the program, I guess, the way that we intended, which was to implement the new bins. There have been some hiccups with bins coming out early. Implement the new bins, communicate and collaborate with the community, and just quietly work our way through it. I think, to be frank, if we've said to any of the community, we're going to take your stuff away, we wouldn't have smart bins, and everyone would have said no. That's been a pretty common occurrence with bin removals up and down the country when other councils have taken bins out.
Yeah, I acknowledge that, but we've just adopted a draft community strategy which talks about involving people in our decision making. We've got a resident survey that is very damning on people's satisfaction with how we're making decisions and their ability to influence. Something as visible and as public as this in terms of a policy decision, I personally feel should have been publicly consulted on. But we are where we are. I guess the key thing is to make sure that we're monitoring any issues of concern and have processes underway to address that. Can I just ask about two other issues? One is, when is the detailed design, what's the time frame for getting detailed design for Lancaster Park? I keep having concern raised with me from the community over when they actually are going to, when we're going to approve a detailed design. I know it's been done in 2 stages, but I just think giving some clarity around the time frame for the detailed design to be finalised would be very helpful.
I'm not sure I can give you the finalised date, but the design process is about to commence. We've just resolved the issue. We had a few issues around how we resolved the reinstatement process with the heritage gates. That's now been resolved. So we're in a position now to understand how we can move forward. We've been making contact with some of the key stakeholders in the last week before lockdown, actually, about setting up those conversations. So that we're about to commence the design process. Of course, the community board gets to make the final decision on the detailed design. So typically that should be within the next 6 months.
Can we get, like, Brent Smith wrote a really excellent memo, and I appreciate things have changed. Can we just get that memo updated with the new timeframes and processes so that we can be really explicit with the community about what's happening? I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
And just sort of on a similar vein, the Linwood Park Village remediation, which I did raise at a previous meeting recently as well, just really concerned to not understand, what's happening there. Like, the money's not sufficient. How do we get into that state? And the community's been putting up with that temporary village for so long, but can we get a coordinated approach to Linwood Park, and what's the best way to progress that? Because I do know we do have money in the LTP, even if it's at later years, around some of the things there, but it would be good to tie it all together and just have a comprehensive plan, including the remediation, so that we can just, again, say to the community, here's what we're going to do, and here's what's the plan.
Sure. I'll make sure there's a community board report update that covers both projects and process.
Is it possible just to get a memo?
There's quite a lot to get through on both projects, so I think a report is probably better, to be frank, if you want it in the public realm.
Right. And at what stage would you come back to us over Linwood Park for a budget increase?
Well, we're exploring what we can do without having to come back for a budget increase. And member of our team, Richard Gibbs, he's exploring opportunities now. So we may not need a budget increase. So we're working through that.
Okay. And what's the time frame for getting an outcome or getting a decision at the community board?
Well, we'll bring that report through to you. It'll take a couple of months by the time it goes through its report development process and approval process. So it'll be, well and truly this side of Christmas.
Right. Okay.
I think that's answered for now, Yanni. Did you have a question on a different topic?
Oh, just a final question for me was, I appreciate this report is quite high level. I think, am I correct that this covers cemeteries as well?
Yeah, it covers all our activities.
I just wondered, we've got a really good cemeteries master plan, and it's got a number of actions and landscape plans, but we don't seem to get any reporting against that. Would it be possible to get a separate report on that cemeteries plan and just have a really good understanding of the actions that have happened, that are still to happen, or that have changed?
I need to think about that a little bit. It is a master plan, not a development plan. The cemetery's actions are driven by the funding in the capital program. It might be, and depending on the particular communities we're working with, there are different views on the appropriateness of that master plan. It might be worthwhile providing this committee with an update, a general update on the implementation of that plan and kind of where to next. I could see Councillor Turner nodding, because I know Banks Peninsula have concerns that need to be addressed, and others may as well.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful, but I think as long as it references back to the actions that we said we were going to do, and appreciate that we may not have done some of them because they're unfunded or they may have changed, but it would be good. It would be good for us to understand the rationale behind changes, or if things are lacking funding, or have had funding and not happened. So, I would welcome that. That plan is actually very detailed and does have very discrete actions and budgets attached. So I would welcome getting a report back on that.
And we'll look at the appropriateness of how that report's done, whether it could slot in as part of the next parks update, or whether it needs its own report, and the most efficient way to do that.
I can probably answer that. I think it should be its own individual report. Okay. It's a very important topic, obviously.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm just aware that that's 3 additional reports from that set of questions. So
the community board ones, I'm pretty sure the guys were drafting one anyway, so I'm not too worried about that.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, I'll move on to Tim. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew, just on 4.3 on page 22, community participation. With the long-term plan, we agreed to increase budget for the community rangers in the north and the south, because I presume the north is the same as ours. Our ranger in the south is outstanding. She's done amazing jobs. And one of the things that we wanted to do as a council was to get more community participation, which we have achieved. But then it's kind of almost too successful. That's why we've approved these extra rangers. I'm just wondering where we are at the moment with them.
We're going through the processes of getting updated position descriptions approved, getting resources in place for them, getting simple things like vehicles and so forth is quite challenging at the moment. So we're in the process of setting those roles up, and pretty hopeful we'll get them up and running before Christmas.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Anne, and then Jimmy.
Oh, kia ora, Andrew. You're just following on from Tim. Will we get to meet them, and can you tell it? Will we know what specific sort of parts of Christchurch they'll be looking after?
No, you're not allowed to meet them. Sorry. Yes, of course you can meet them once they're employed, and they're essentially there'll be another person dedicated to what we call the South. So we'll articulate what that means in terms of wards. So there'll be one person employed to join Kerry's team over in the peninsula, and they're going to have quite a primary focus initially in the harbour, where there's a lot of unsatisfied demand. One for the South team and one for the North team. We're just modifying their position descriptions a little bit to focus more on community participation, because that's where the opportunities lie. Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions. Just reiterating what others have said, it's a really positive, fantastic report. So thank you. The Adopt a Patch on page 23. How do people get involved in that? Is that on the website, council website?
Kate, are you online?
I am. Good morning,
kia ora, Kate.
Kia ora. Nice to see all your smiling faces. So the Adopt a Patch is part of somebody else's part of the report, I think, is it? someone else, Andrew.
No, that's me driving this, sorry, and trying to get the community park guys once we get our new ranges in place. What we want to do is we want to work in a different way with our minor capital in particular, particularly around planting. So we want to start a program which is, kind of adopt your patch to get a stronger connection between locals and their local park. And start conversations with them around some of minor renewals things. So instead of us going in there and saying, our data tells us you need a new seat, actually talk to the community and say, well, what do you guys want us to spend this money on in your park? So it's a slightly different approach to sort of minor non-safety driven asset renewals. To build that community connection and what was talked about before about community-led decision making. Because we can assume a lot, but it's better if we find ways for local communities and people that are really interested in their local parks to tell us what they would like to see done first. With the funding that you guys have already approved, so not to try and drive more and more funding.
Yeah. Andrew, I think one of the things that's in there with the Adopt a Patch thing is it says there's a group of local residents who volunteer their time to become a caretaker of gardens in the Sumners and Taylorsville stake areas. If there are other people in other areas across the city wanting to adopt a patch and take over a bit of maintenance and those kind of things, how do they go about doing that?
Well, that's really that relationship with that community partnership style ranger.
So do they get in contact with the community board governance team who'll put them in contact? Or?
Yeah, they can contact anyone. It'll filter through probably initially until we're up and running properly through to Kate's team. And Sarah and Kate's team will communicate with them, find out what they need to do, get someone down there, make sure it's all safe, etc., and away we go.
Great.
If I can just leap in there, Sarah. We're doing a bit of proactive work around our heritage gardens at the moment. We've just recently got Friends of Rising Home up and running. We're doing the same thing with Avesbury. So they're, going out, doing a simple thing like a letter drop a kilometre out from these parks, which is a pretty cheap way to get in touch with people and saying, are people interested in forming a Friends of group, seems to be being very, very effective at this point.
That's great. Okay, and we've got some quite long existing Friends of Edmonds Petrie Gardens and stuff too in that space.
Can I just have one more question? Sorry, I know I've taken a bit of time.
Last one, and then it's Jimmy.
Okay, traffic management plan for Napunawai, Andrew. I'm assuming there'll be involvement in locals in that process.
Absolutely. So they've just been finalising some of the movement data. They've been doing lots of capturing over the winter months in particular with all the sporting activity, and they've also just drafted a parking layout specifically for the AMP show. That's where they're up to with the process. The next step is to get all that collected data on BAU, if you like, hockey and athletics and all that sort of stuff, and start the conversation with the locals about how we address potential future demand driven by Netzel, etc.
That's great. Thanks so much. Jimmy.
Thank you. Andrew, I have two questions. First one on page 18, 4.1.10. Even you reply, answered some concern. I'm still concerned because based on your information, you emphasize smart bin implementation has been tried in some of the popular park. But I just want to know regarding to the quantity the staff considered to allocate or distribute to those sports park or local park, etc., like 1 or 2, these smart bin, how to assess all those ones? Because like in the southwest or Hornby area, like Waikola Park, Warren Park, etc., the feedback they always thought is short of sufficient number of the smart bin allocate in that area. So I just don't know what's all the criteria to allocate the number of the smart bin.
So it's the initial criteria, Jimmy, were based on information around how full all the static bins were from our contractor.
Yeah.
And just bearing in mind that the initial approach was, might have been 1 or potentially 2 bins, depending on that data. And now we're monitoring, and I think you can see in the report, the process for monitoring, as I said earlier, is live.
Yes.
And it will be a genuine demand-driven. I do feel that initially we've been dealing with people's reaction, which is natural to something has gone, therefore there will be a problem. What we're using is daily data now on fullness of bins, frequency of having to go and empty, and also understanding the amount of loose litter that might be lying around. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I'm concerned because short of sufficient lost the number of the smarter bins. So that's why the kind of the residents, they just throw the rubbish, spread over to the park, etc. And also the community or staff or engage with contractor need to tidy up, maybe waste more kind of the cost. Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy. Hey, Andrew, you mentioned earlier about some communications, some more proactive communications on the bin situation. Are they coming out soon? And will some of those include sort of, some signage at the parks, those kind of things?
Al, are you online? I'm not sure if you're online.
Yes.
You are. Thanks. Sorry. Yep. Cool. Do you want to just add a little bit more to the bin topic?
Yeah. Apologies for not being able to sign in earlier. It was systems driven, and also I wanted to make sure Andrew got a chance to answer all the questions. Second round of communication driven off the back of data that we collect through the new smart bin system. But also what we want to do is, instead of throwing a lot of signs up in parks, I think what we want to do is perhaps hit some of the we still have 400 static or old style bins that are out in the parks. We haven't removed those, and we've just paused a little bit. But before we finish that part of the program, it'll give us an opportunity to perhaps put some stickers on there with communications regarding, take it home. Also, what we've learned from the smart bin. It's the one side of a two-headed coin. There's, in addition to the loose litter that Jimmy mentioned, these smart bins are hopefully by design going to take care of a lot of that loose litter, blowing through those old style bins like they used to. So the new, the next wave of communications will probably follow up with an additional news line, which was really well received, the first one that we put out, in addition to maybe not signage, but stickering those static bins before we take them away.
That's great. Thanks a lot for that. Are there any further questions on the parks report?
Sorry, I have one more question.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you. On page 21, 4.2.2, regarding to the skate park, during the long-term plan, staff particularly mentioned a moment in the market short of those designer or planner. So now we have quite a few skate parks in citywide waiting for the design. So I just don't know a moment whether this situation has been changed or not.
No, there's excuse me. There's no change, Jimmy, from the decisions that were made in the LTP. If you're referring in particular to Waikola Park, the resolution was to address that, through the annual plan. And so we're still working towards that.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Okay, any further questions?
Yeah.
Sam.
Oh, cool. Hey, thanks, Al and Andrew, for running through that bin stuff. There's obviously still a couple of issues to work through. Just one thing, just so I'm clear. So the ones we haven't removed at the moment, is there a possibility if the demand continues in those smaller parks that we'll actually retain them?
Do you want to go, Al, or do you want me to go? Yeah.
You might polish up whatever I put down. We're looking at it with an open mind at this point. The thing that we have to critically manage is that they need to go for me to be able to stay in budget as part of the savings that you captured earlier. So we'll certainly. I think what we will do, and we have provision for additional smart bins to be added after we collect data and basically find out where these needs exist. Certainly not. I think it would be a step backwards if we left these old static bins because they just have too many other problems. They overflow easily. You know, one pizza box will take them out in lots of instances. And they also disperse loose litter through wind and vermin, you know, scattering through them, things of that nature. So I'd prefer not to, but anything's possible. We're looking at it with an open mind.
I'll just add to that. One of the benefits of the smart bin approach is that, as opposed to static bins, is the contractor can be very efficient in terms of when they how they use their resource. So we can install a smart bin with a capital cost of about $800, or if I got, no, 1,000, I think.
8,000.
Yeah, $8,000, but it doesn't necessarily drive up our OPEX costs because we can monitor how full those bins are. So I think the reality is, Sam, we're dealing with people's perception of demand a little bit, which is understandable. But if we do need to, you know, over the next year, just increase the number of smart bins to manage that community expectation, it does have the benefit of not driving up OPEX costs, whereas leaving static bins in place, the only way the contractor can respond is we have to pay them to turn up whether the bin's empty or not.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Completely get that. I guess where I'm coming from is if there are bins and parks that we weren't planning on putting another bin in. If there's enough demand, I'm thinking if you're in my area, we could potentially look at scheduling in a one-off smart bin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, rather than retaining static bins, correct.
Yeah. And just the only other one, and it's a wee bit cheeky, but before this was all done, our community board chipped in some money to put some bins in, smart bins. Would someone be able to chat offline with Marianne, our governance manager, because if they've been rolled out across the city, we're kind of thinking perhaps our own funds could be used elsewhere if it was already in a parks budget.
Yeah, fine.
That sounds like a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, are there any further questions?
Yes, please.
Aaron.
Yeah, Andrew, I back up Yanni's points that were raised earlier around the bins, and some of us have had a lot of feedback around it because there's still a lot of people out there that believe rubbish is core council business. So could all bin decisions going forward be made by either community boards or council? So the public have got someone they can point the finger at and go, why did you take away my bin?
Sure, yeah. So by that you mean any future bin installations that post the monitoring, you'd like to see a report to the community boards prior?
Well, installations and removals, any removals at all that exist need to go to either council or community boards. And I believe the last decision should have been an LTP one or an annual plan one.
Okay.
There's still a lot of people not happy with the bin removal. They're not into the behaviour change. It's just not where they're at.
Okay, hang on, before you answer, Andrew,
sure.
The process-wise, that's not a decision for now. At the moment, it sits in a staff delegation. So what we would need is some advice on the implications of that before a decision was made to change the delegations. So if we are able to get some advice on the implications of staff writing a report every time a bin needed changing, then that would be really useful before we make a decision to do that. Is that all right,
No,
Andrew?
It's not changing the bin, but when we change
Aaron,
our
it's a
core
change whether
council
it goes
business
in or
away
out.
from taking away rubbish, the public deserve a say. And as the public's representatives, we should be held accountable when they're not happy.
That's fine. We'll just get some advice on what happens there. So
Yeah,
currently
sure.
it's a staff delegation.
Yeah, sure. One thing to be mindful of is there's the number of bins, and it's quite different, obviously, when it goes to zero, but there's also capacity. And Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but the capacity of a smart bin is, well, actually, I can't even guess. Al, what's the capacity of a smart bin compared to a static?
Andrew, it's roughly 6 to 10 times the capacity. It depends on, obviously, the type of rubbish that's put in it.
Right. So I think it's probably important to reiterate that message that it's about, we're trying to target our service to meet the demand. In terms of where we are now, given that we still have, I think Al mentioned 400 odd static bins in place that are due to come out, if there was a desire from elected members for that to become an elected member decision, we're going to have to ask for some money back operationally for the bins that stay in. So we'd have to do that through the annual planning process and leave probably, cop the cost this year and readdress it through the annual plan process.
Okay, so what I think we might do here is, Andrew, we'll have a chat after this meeting
Sure.
and with Aaron as well, and get a handle on what advice would be needed if we were going to make a decision to do that. Because there's a range of different things that will need to be taken into consideration, and some information that might help in that. So if we have a chat about that afterwards, and we'll get Aaron involved in that as well. Yeah.
So just for general consumption, and I totally appreciate that you guys get contacted directly a lot. Overall, through our CSR process, we've had a pretty significant reduction in complaints about litter in parks since the smart bin smart bins have been installed.
Yeah,
so before any decision gets made, I'd like the opportunity to bring all the information and put it in front of you guys.
Yeah, and I think that's the type of information that I was thinking of, as well as maybe a couple of examples of the old bins, the amount of resource they took to empty, and the actual demand that was on those would be quite useful. Because I think you're right, Andrew, that perception may be quite different to reality when it comes to some of these. But I think getting that information will be really useful. I think we'll move to Leanne and then Yanni.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I did want to intervene on this. This is a Zoom meeting. Staff delegation matters are for the council, not for committees of the whole. And I think it's really important that we get detailed advice on this. Rubbish bins have been an interest to me for a very long time for a number of reasons. And, I just think that we actually do need to know some facts and figures before we make any sort of change to the delegations that are in place. It's all very well to say that you want people involved in the decision making, but I think it's much more important sometimes to explain to people why a particular change in focus is being undertaken. But that has to be done through a council decision, not by a committee of the whole. So I'm happy to join in that conversation with you, Andrew, but I don't want us to proceed with this until we're back around the table, talking to each other and getting that briefing in person, and looking at how we better communicate perhaps with the public rather than presenting it as a simplistic thing. So there you go.
Thanks so much. Okay, Yanni.
So I just wanted to be clear, we're not stopping removing bins until we get the information, or we are?
So at the moment, Andrew?
So we're not removing any static bins at the moment. We weren't
Well,
going
obviously because we're in the lockdown. Yeah.
No. But we're not intending to remove the static bins until we start the second wave of smart bin installation. Okay, but we need to have this offline conversation.
So we had a really good memo that came through that had all the list of the ones that were being removed. Is it possible just to get an update to understand the ones where they still have bins?
Yeah, we can provide. The project manager should be able to provide an update of what's happened today.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other thing was I just wanted to check, like, in terms of the next stage of the process, is there an ability to consult with our community?
I think that was
what we were discussing just then, Yanni.
Yeah.
So we're going to get some information together.
We'll get options around that when it comes back.
Not necessarily a report, but we're going to get some advice to start with. And I'm going to work with Aaron and Leanne and Andrew on that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'd welcome that. I think I'd be really interested in too whether there was any audit issues raised with how this decision was made. But I guess that's a separate process, a separate committee, maybe audit and risk. Yeah, thank you.
No disrespect to Aaron, but this is a council one, so I just like to deal with it first, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it with all of the councillors. Thank you.
Yep.
No disrespect taken. It is simplistic.
Well, I can't see you, Aaron, so I don't know whether you're laughing or not.
I'm never laughing. I take this deadly seriously.
Okay, let's move on. Are there any further questions? Yanni, you can take your hand down now. Any further questions on the Parks report? If not, I just want to say thanks, Andrew. I know that the nature of these reports is while they hold a huge amount of really good, really thorough, and actually a lot of really positive information about the sheer amount of work that is happening in our parks area. The nature of these types of sessions is that councillors will tend to ask questions on things they're not sure about or they have concerns about rather than pointing out the stuff they do. And so I'd like to say a big thanks because there's a huge amount of work gone into the report and that our park staff do. So thank you very much, and to the team for that.
Sure, thank you. And given that it's the first report, very happy to receive any feedback of how it can be modified or finessed to better suit the information that you need.
That's great. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm happy to move the receipt. Do I have a seconder? Sam? And do we have any debate? No, in that case, I will put the report.
Sarah, I was just going to say, yeah, it was only really, really briefly, just one good thing out of the rubbish bin stuff so far is I've had local residents raise it with me, and that Andrew and his team have been able to resolve them pretty quickly. So we probably shouldn't get too lost in that. But what I'd be really keen to see is if there are parks where we're getting rid of them altogether and there is still demand, that we look at a long-term solution. So, I mean, it's been a difficult discussion over Zoom, but I still think that we shouldn't be too hard on Andrew and the team. They've actually done quite a good job so far, and they're responding to community needs.
Thanks. Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I really support the team on this, and any change, isn't perfect, but the smart bins are a really, really good way forward. And if people do have to walk a wee bit further in their parks to deliver their rubbish into a smart bin, well, so be it. They've actually walked to the park or whatever. I think it's a really good way forward, and I think we should be really positive. I think we should also wait for Andrew to bring the factual information rather than the phone calls we get about people complaining. And when we get those phone calls, I explain to them what we're trying to achieve here, rather than saying, "Oh, bloody council." I think it's a really good way forward, and to have those old bins just as we have them, everyone's seen them with one pizza box in them, and they just don't work. So I do think we've got to be a wee bit more open-minded and supportive of staff and our own council with regards to this. And as the other one about the dog poo, etc., I've walked my dog every morning. There's one bin in the 4K route I do. If it does its business beforehand, great. And if it doesn't, I carry it home. We've got to take responsibility, self-responsibility for what we do. And if people aren't willing to do that, then that's a real shame. And so much for the climate change emergency. We're all going to be in the water anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, thanks to Andrew and the team for the report. I think these reports coming regularly are incredibly helpful and very, very useful. I'd also acknowledge Yanni for raising the cemeteries master plan in questions, and to Andrew, thanks for raising those particular Banks Peninsula matters. There's definitely a need for a partial review of the appropriateness and the implementation of that cemeteries master plan. Parts of it are really good, as have been noted, but parts of it are in need of consideration of a refresh or perhaps some further thinking. And I'd welcome that additional report that was referred to in the answer to Yanni's questions coming sooner rather than later when the opportunity is there. Councillors will be very aware of the submissions from the Akaroa Cemeteries Group to various long-term plan and annual plan processes over the years. And there's also the eco-cemeteries issue, which has been raised particularly as regards Diamond Harbour, but obviously is far wider than that as well. It's worth bearing in mind that the Cemeteries Master Plan was adopted in 2013, 2 years after the earthquakes, when both residents and I imagine council at that time had far more pressing issues top of mind than the way that we manage our cemeteries. So certainly welcome that report coming when there's the opportunity and further consideration there. I'd also acknowledge the focus with the additional resource on community partnerships and participation, particularly around Littleton Harbour. A huge focus on community planting, not only around the harbour but other locations across the city. Of course, planting is only the beginning. There's a need for ongoing maintenance once planting has taken place, and certainly welcome the additional focus that we've heard about in this meeting today. So thanks for the report, and thanks for really fulsome answers to some of the great questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. I do want to acknowledge that the maintenance of the cemeteries has improved, and this has kind of been an ongoing issue where it seems to go up and down. But I just want to acknowledge the work that staff have done to improve the maintenance of our cemeteries. I think that is important to acknowledge. The critical thing is that when we agree to plans as a council at a governance level, we just need to have oversight of what's being done in accordance with those plans or what's changed. So I welcome getting that fuller, more detailed report back on the cemeteries master plan, accepting that things have changed since 2013. The issue with the rubbish bins that I have is that really we should be focused on, we've just adopted a draft community strategy that talks about working with people. We should work with our community on what we're trying to achieve rather than do things to our community. I think if you look at the rubbish bin issue, that's really given our resident surveys satisfaction around people feeling involved and included in council decision making. It's a classic issue that we should have gone out with a consultation and an engagement with our community to explain what we were trying to achieve and what we were aiming to do and work with them. So, I welcome the kind of temporary pause. I welcome the opportunity to have a conversation, hopefully with our community, about how we're doing that, because I think everyone wants to reduce the amount of litter in our city. We all want to keep Christchurch beautiful. We all want people to pick up their dog do. But it's just how we do it, I think, is of real concern, particularly in this particular case. So I look forward to getting the information back, and I acknowledge the work that our parks unit is doing also, especially with the lockdown. Obviously, a lot of our parks are being well used in local neighbourhoods, but also there is a requirement to make sure that things like playgrounds had a bit of tape and a bit of signage. So just want to acknowledge the COVID lockdown impact on our park staff and thank them for the work that they've been doing to keep us safe.
Thanks, Yanni. Anne.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. And a fantastic report and wonderful work that's being done. And I think the strong message coming through is that whole focus on community involvement and connecting them to their local parks and reserves. That's a strong message that I get from this anyway. And I think that's incredibly important in strengthening. I think it's all about relationships, and I know we all appreciate the incredible work the rangers do in building those relationships and getting people involved in plantings and things. So I look forward to the 3 new people coming on board and the work that they will do. But this report's so good, and I'm assuming that it goes to community boards because it really should be, I think, looked at specifically at a community board level rather than just sort of being part of the big tin can somewhere. So hopefully that will happen. So thanks for the work.
Thanks, Anne. Leanne.
I just wanted to make the point that a particular occasion when I came across a decision that had been made in relation to the rubbish tins, and I didn't want to spend all my time debating rubbish tins, but the staff were incredibly open to the conversation about whether that was an appropriate location for one of the smart bins. And it makes sense that in areas where people literally go and can, or go in a car and can leave and take their rubbish with them, that's a completely different situation than somebody who's perhaps just buying some stuff in town, going and sitting in Victoria Park. Obviously, I've been walking around Hagley Park over the last few days more than usual and have actually particularly noticed rubbish tins. There's one that's completely full in the middle of the park. It's not a smart bin. The two smart bins, they're fine. So I just think that the smart bin approach is definitely the way to go. It makes a massive difference in terms of the capacity for the organisation to do the things that it really needs to be getting on and doing. Those dumb bins, let's call them that, they do encourage people to continue to put rubbish there even when they are full. And I always remember the photograph that I saw on Facebook where an overflowing bin, there were beer bottles and everything on the ground and things that were broken. And the comments on Facebook were largely, you know, damn council, they don't do their job, you know, this is the council's fault. Not one person mentioned the fact that idiots who keep putting stuff near a bin when it's already overflowing are actually the one that's contributing to the problem. So I think that local communities are now starting to say, well, actually, we need to contribute ourselves to how our communities look. And they'd much rather have a large bin. I know in New Brighton it has gone down a treat to have that there rather than these overflowing bins. So I just think that the council staff are doing a brilliant job. But look, if people do have issues, then they are incredibly open to resolving them and finding solutions. And I think that's the best thing.
Thank you. Okay, no further debate.
Oh, if I may just add a couple of bits.
Sorry, I couldn't see your hand up.
Oh, that's all right.
That's fine. Yeah.
That's okay. I've got a sore shoulder. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for your work. And I think the report as a first report is great. Just on the rubbish bins, certainly the feedback at our community board is not that we're against the smart bins. In fact, we were the first community board to adopt the smart bins and put our own money into them because we could see the actual value in them to the community. What our board and the feedback we've had is that people weren't happy with the removal of bins without them knowing. I think there is a bit of education involved, so that can work. Maybe letting people know that there's no bin any longer in that park. There's another one that might be 2 or 3k away that they could walk to or drop it in or take it home. But we just got to let people know there are other options in the journey to retraining them. Or we could just take away the rubbish. But either way, if the community get a say, like we said earlier in this meeting, that would be good.
Thanks. Any further debate? No, in that case, I'll put that thumbs up for those who are in favour of receiving the report.
Aye.
And Aaron?
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone against, please say so. That's probably easiest. No. Any abstentions? No, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. And I'll now ask Councillor Davidson to close with a karakia.
Punahia te pō whiri marama. Tomokia te ao whatu tangata. Tātai ki runga, tātai ki waro, tātai ahoro. Homie, huie, taikie.
Taikie. Kia ora, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow for Finance and Performance.
Well done, Sarah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Well done.